I don't know how long I've been here. I don't even remember how I got here. The last thing I recall is the feeling of cold air on my skin, the sound of my own breath fogging in the night. I had been driving home, taking the back roads like I always do, because they're quieter, emptier. I liked the solitude, the stretch of road cutting through the forest, the feeling of being alone with my thoughts. But now I'm not alone. It started when I saw something in my headlights. At first I thought it was a deer, a shape, pale and thin, standing at the edge of the trees. But as I got closer, it didn't move. Deer don't stand still like that. They twitch, they shudder, they run. This thing didn't run, it just watched, its head tilted slightly, like it was studying me. The closer I got, the more my stomach twisted. My hands tightened around the wheel. I didn't want to slow down, but I couldn't stop looking at it. Its eyes weren't reflecting the light, just deep, black voids. I drove past it, forcing myself not to look in the rearview mirror, telling myself I imagined it, that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Then my radio cut out, just static at first, but then something else. A voice, too faint to make out, buried under the sound of dead air. I turned the dial, but it didn't change. The voice didn't stop. It was whispering something. My skin prickled. My fingers felt numb against the steering wheel. I turned the radio off, but the whispering continued. It wasn't coming from the speakers anymore. It was inside the car. The air turned ice cold. My breath fogged up in front of me. I gripped the wheel tighter and pressed my foot against the gas. The road stretched endlessly ahead, but something felt wrong. The trees on either side of me started to blur together, the branches twisting unnaturally, like they weren't real anymore. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, that I was just tired. But then I saw something ahead of me in the distance. My stomach dropped. It was me, my car, my headlights, coming toward me from the other direction. I slammed on the brakes. My tires screeched against the pavement, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my chest. But the other car didn't stop. It kept coming, speeding toward me, headlights blinding. I shut my eyes, bracing for the impact. But there was nothing. No sound, no crash. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting in the middle of the road. My car was the only one there. The headlights stretched across the empty asphalt, illuminating the trees. Everything was silent. My hands were shaking. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, trying to tell myself that I was just seeing things. But then something knocked on my window. I froze. It wasn't a normal knock. It was slow, deliberate, 3 taps. I turned my head, my throat tightening. There was no one there, just an empty road. But on the glass, pressed against the window, was a handprint. Not mine. I didn't sleep that night. I kept driving, refusing to stop, refusing to look in my mirrors. I just needed to get home. I needed to be somewhere safe. But when I finally made it back to my house, something felt off. The lights inside were already on. The front door was unlocked. My hands trembled as I stepped inside. The air was still heavy, like the house had been holding its breath. And then I heard it. A voice, coming from the bedroom. I took a step forward, the floor creaking beneath me. The door was cracked open, just enough for me to see inside. There was someone sitting on my bed. Their back was to me. Their shoulders rose and fell with slow, steady breaths. My breaths. I felt my entire body go numb as they turned their head. Not all the way, just enough for me to see their profile, just enough for me to see my own face staring back at me. Then they smiled. A slow, unnatural curve of the lips. And in my own voice they whispered, "You took the wrong road." I don't remember falling asleep. I only remember locking every door, closing every window, pushing the dresser in front of my bedroom door and sitting on the edge of my bed with the lights on. I told myself I wouldn't close my eyes. I told myself I would stay awake, that if I kept my mind sharp, I could figure out what was happening. But exhaustion crept in, pulling at my limbs, my thoughts unraveling at the edges. When I woke up, the dresser had been moved. Not far, just a few inches, just enough for the door to open. I stared at it for a long time, my pulse hammering against my ribs. I knew I hadn't moved it. I had wedged it so tightly against the frame that it would have taken real force to shift it even an inch. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. It was dead. The charger was still plugged in, but the battery was empty, the screen completely black. Then I noticed the closet door. I never sleep with the closet door open, but now it was wide open. I swallowed hard, forcing my breath to steady. My clothes still hung inside, everything exactly where it should be, but something felt off. The darkness inside the closet wasn't normal. It was too deep, like the space inside stretched farther than the walls should allow. A sharp tap sounded from inside it. I froze. Not a knock, not a creak, a tap, like fingernails against wood. Slow. Deliberate. My mouth went dry. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move. Another tap. Then a whisper, low, almost laughing, "You shouldn't be here." The voice was my own. I bolted out of bed, yanking open my bedroom door and sprinting down the hallway. But as soon as I turned the corner, my legs locked up. The front door was wide open. I know I locked it, I know I did. The air outside was still, the night pressing in through the open doorway. The street was empty, no cars, no wind, just silence. Then the footsteps started. From inside the house. Slow, uneven, coming from the bedroom. I didn't look back. I ran outside, my bare feet slamming against the pavement, my breath ragged in my chest. The street stretched too long in front of me, the houses warping in my peripheral vision, but I didn't stop. I ran until I couldn't breathe. I ran until my body collapsed on the cold pavement. And when I looked back, the house was gone, nothing but an empty lot where it should have been. But I wasn't alone. A figure stood where the house had been, just a shadow against the night, tall, still, watching me. And in the distance, I heard my own voice whisper, "You took the wrong road." I left town. I didn't pack. I didn't say goodbye. I just got in my car and drove until the road felt unfamiliar, until I no longer recognized the street signs, until I saw a new city skyline stretching in the distance. I didn't care where I was going as long as I wasn't there anymore. The gas station clerk barely glanced at me when I stopped for fuel. The motel on the outskirts of town looked just run down enough that no one would ask questions. The woman at the front desk slid me a key without looking up, and I was grateful for that. The room smelled like old cigarettes and dust. The wallpaper was peeling in the corners, and the bedspread was stiff with years of forgotten guests. The air conditioner rattled in the window, a dull hum that filled the silence. But it didn't matter. I locked the door, slid the chain into place, pushed the chair under the handle, and sat on the bed with my back against the headboard. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't check my phone. I just listened. For the first time in days, there was nothing. No whispers, no footsteps, no doors creaking open on their own. I let out a slow breath and closed my eyes. And then a knock, soft, gentle. Just once, my stomach turned to ice. I didn't move. The knock came again. I reached for my phone, but the screen was still dead. The knock came a third time, and this time I heard it. A voice muffled through the door. "You forgot something." Every hair on my body stood on end. My hands clenched around the blanket. I stayed completely still. Then, scrapping, a slow, deliberate drag of something sharp along the wood. It stopped at the handle. The chain lock rattled. I held my breath. The knob twisted, but the chair held firm. Silence. I didn't move for hours. Not until the first rays of sunlight cut through the cracks in the blinds. When I finally found the courage to check, the hallway was empty. But something was waiting just outside my door. A mirror, standing upright, placed directly in front of my room. And on the surface, my reflection, except it wasn't mirroring me. It was watching, waiting, and when I stepped closer, my own voice whispered, "You can't outrun yourself." I slammed the door shut and pressed my back against it, my breath coming in quick, uneven gasps. My pulse thudded against my ribs. The chair was still in place, the chain lock still latched. No one had entered my room, but I could feel something in the air, a weight pressing down on my chest. I wanted to leave. I wanted to get back in my car and drive until the memories of that house, that thing that looked like me, faded into the rearview mirror. But something told me that it wouldn't matter. I checked the mirror again. This time, inside my room. The reflection was normal. My face, my clothes, the motel bed behind me. But when I turned away, just for a second, I saw it move. Not much, just a twitch, a shift, a smile. I grabbed my bag, my keys, and I ran. I didn't stop to check out. I didn't look back. But when I got to my car, I saw something that made my breath hitch in my throat. Another mirror, leaning against my car door, reflecting something that wasn't me. A version of myself that was just a little too tall, that stood too still. And this time, when it smiled, it waved.